Hi.
Whoa, we're starting now?
Yo.
Oh. Okay.
Like it's recorded?
It's recorded.
Oh. All right. So hi, we are the Fight Inside Society. Just before we get started, we thought we would do some introductions. So we're going to tell you our name, our school, our program of study or area of interest, as well as a little bit of an icebreaker and a way to kind of get to know us. We're going to tell you what our preferred superpower would be if we can.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
I guess I'll start. My name is Gary Wilson, and I attend Ryerson University. I'm studying experimental psychology there. And if I could have a superpower, my last one apparently was cheating. So this time I'll just say the ability to control matter.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Gary. Hi, my name is Melanie. I'm a third-year nursing student at Ontario Tech University with a specialization in pediatrics.
Okay.
And if I had a superpower, it would be teleportation.
Just trying to escape. My name is Lincoln Alexander Estridge. I go to U of T, Mississauga. My program of study is sociology, mental health studies, psychology. My superpower of choice would be, I said invisibility before, but I'm creepy. So I'm going to say invisibility anyways. I don't care.
Because you're still creepy.
Whatever.
Okay. My name is Joshua Pratt. I attend University of Toronto Scarborough. I'm also in my third year, and I'm doing a double major in human biology and health studies. And my superpower of choice would definitely be telekinesis.
Okay. So we are a group of young adults, right, who are advocating for other youth and young adults in marginalized communities. Using education, discussion, and referral. This has enabled us to create culturally sensitive mental health advocates to act as a frontline buffers in their respective communities. We feel our methods are efficient because we understand that everyone's experience and outlook in regards to mental health is different in one way or another. We found that discussion and communication are great techniques to use because when we stay silent, stigma increases. Discussions allow different people from all walks of life to empathize with others' experiences. Building empathy is a key and fundamental building block as we aim to increase cultural sensitivity within the mental health community. So
why mental health? Before we get into our talk about specifically mental health, I'm just going to quickly mention the World Health Organization's definition of health. So it states that health is the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. So as you can see from this definition, mental health is an integral part of our health as a whole. And we feel that mental health is often neglected in societies, especially the society that we live in. And our hope is that through discussion about mental health, we can improve the way that we interact with the topic. And by doing that, we can improve our health overall, just the health of populations overall.
We can continue to build this empathy by having discussions because discussions facilitate healing. Our organization, the Fight Inside Society, is facilitating this webinar so that we can have a discussion about cultural sensitivity as it relates to mental health. As you may know, the Sustainable Development Goals, as defined by the United Nations, are placing an increased emphasis on non-communicable disorders, including mental illness and substance use disorders. So that's further discussed in the WHO Mental Health Action Plan for 2013 to 2020. We feel that in order to improve the mental health status globally, we have to attack the issue at the individual and community levels. So throughout this webinar, we want to answer the following questions. So I want you to understand how communication and discussion influence mental health and healing.
Absolutely.
We want to understand how cultural sensitivity and its importance relative to the effective facilitation of mental health aid. And lastly, we'll touch on how privilege influences our understanding and coping with mental health.
So when we talk about mental health and also mental illness as an extension of potentially poor mental health or other things, it's important to recognize that mental illness is not specific to any one culture. So it's neither exclusive nor excluded for any given group of people. We know that mental health issues affect the global community. And so with that being said, some coping mechanisms for mental illness or poor mental health are subjective, and they are subjective to the individual, the community, and to the culture. So in this sense, we find cultural sensitivity is important. And cultural sensitivity is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's being aware of the cultural differences and similarities that exist between peoples without actually assigning them a value. So We're not basically saying that any difference is better or worse, or positive or negative, or right or wrong, just acknowledging that these differences exist.
And that cultural sensitivity is vital to achieving the global mental health goals, whether you're providing direct care to mentally ill patients, creating policies and legislation to advocate, or helping to decrease mental health stigma. Culturally sensitive mental advocates make a huge difference regardless of their role. So it's important to create culturally sensitive mental health advocates because in order to advocate for accessible mental health services globally, we have to understand, one, how mental health services are provided at the community and frontline level. Two, we have to understand our own mental health. And three, we have to understand the effective strategies for helping those with mental illness.
Right, absolutely. And so as mental health advocates, you have that advocating aspect that Melanie just touched on. And the other part of it where you are sort of dealing with those around you in those in your community, we see that there are many benefits to that highlights are the importance of creating culturally sensitive mental health advocates who can work in their communities. So the first is that similar to other kinds of care, it's improved by basically acknowledging all the different aspects of somebody's identity. So the more of their identity that you can relate to and acknowledge, the more effective the care will be. In addition, mental health is almost exclusively affected by our experiences, and the vast majority of people's experiences are shaped by their culture, whether that be your ethnic or cultural background or the environment that you find yourself in. Something as simple as your school or your workplace comes with a certain culture.
Absolutely. So right now I just want to ask you guys to take a second, take a moment and ask yourself, when was the last time or have you ever spoken to someone about your mental health status? Or have you spoken to someone about your mental illness? I'll give you a second. All right. So we at the Fight Inside Society, we like to remember that an intersectional lens is incredibly important when talking about why discussion is an important aspect to the process of improving mental health. We understand that the World Health Organization, WHO, has a few approaches in regards to mental health. Their multi-sectoral approach is defined as a comprehensive and coordinated response for mental health, requires partnership with multiple public sectors such as health, education, employment, judicial, housing, social, and other relevant sectors as well. We understand at the Fight Inside that discussion is a form of healing, both a coping mechanism and a form of two-way learning. When I talk about coping mechanisms, I'm referring to things such as depression. The main goal for depression is to isolate yourself, to be so consumed in the stigma that you are alone, that you are by yourself, that you don't reach out for help. So discussion is meant for you in order to keep individuals around you that support you, individuals that understand what you're going through, maybe have a lens on it or have a perspective on it or an opinion that can help you and support you with that discussion. In order to be a mental health advocate now, you must first develop an awareness of your own mental health, understanding your privilege, whether it's your burden or privilege of not having to bear it.
So just to repeat what Lincoln just kind of said, we feel that in order to be aware of your own mental health, being able to understand the privilege that you have and how that affects the way that you navigate spaces is important. So now I'm just going to touch a little bit on how we can identify privilege within ourselves, and then we're also going to kind of chime in and just acknowledge privilege to kind of show you what it looks like. So Gary had said earlier that the quality of mental health aid, help, and care is improved by considering as many aspects of a person's identity as possible. And it's important to be aware of your own mental health and how it affects you in order to be a sensitive mental health advocate. Using intersectionality as a tool of analysis, acknowledging our privileges in spaces we're in is an important step in understanding how the way we operate kind of differs from the way other people operate in those similar spaces, and also how the way that we operate may affect the way other people operate. So to touch a little bit on privilege analysis. So there are many axes of privilege that can either we can either have or lack privilege along. So some examples of these include race, ethnicity, gender, sex, sexual orientation, age, culture, religion, ability. So that is either being able-bodied or in an able mental state, or being disabled or in a hindered mental state. And as well as family status and education. So as you can see, a few of these, some may exist on a binary, for example, sex, Actually, scratch that. Sex isn't actually a binary. So many of them aren't actually on a binary. Many of them involve a spectrum. So, for example, gender. There's the spectrum of gender, and privilege differs along that entire axis.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna kind of acknowledge a few privileges that we have.
Yeah.
So a privilege that we have is the fact that we get to live in Canada. Now, Canada is often ranked top 20 in the world in terms of quality of life. And obviously that does not come through ethical means per se. So we obviously are a colonized country, and as much as we do not endorse it, and as much as we are constantly fighting to decolonize minds, we do have to acknowledge that we have benefited from the system that was built after colonialism.
Absolutely. I would say a stigma that I've experienced, a privilege that I've experienced, yes, is that I am aware of the stigma in my community. I'm aware that in the Black community specifically, that there is a stigma against mental health and there's a stigma towards mental health. Also in regards to religion, because where I come from, the community that I'm surrounded with are very religious individuals, spiritual individuals. So in terms of that stigma, I'm also aware that in the church, mental health is not very regarded as something that's real. It's usually regarded as something like the devil's works. But I feel like I understand that's also opinionated. It's not all churches, all Christians that believe that. So understanding that that is also a stigma amongst the church people, not having the education. I feel like that's another privilege that I have, that I have the education on this matter as well as the spiritual aspect in order to understand the intersections of the two.
And to build off Lincoln's point, education is a huge privilege. Like, we've all been fortunate to attend post-secondary school where we can get access to this information. And we're able to live in a country where we can build off the existing policies and the existing mental health infrastructure. So that allows us to have that kind of privilege in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another example of privilege that I can sort of think of is in reference to my own mental health and my own experiences. I can say that, I haven't had to deal with any mental health issues that have been severely debilitating in my life, and that in and of itself is a sort of privilege to be able to sort of go about my days. And of course, everybody has their struggles. Nobody's perfect, but to be able to say with confidence that my mental health state has not hindered me from pursuing my goals or has not caused issues for me in my daily life is in and of itself a privilege. And there are many people who also have that privilege, and there are many people who don't.
So those are a few examples of how to kind of analyze privilege within yourself. Thank you guys for sharing.
Of course,
we hope that kind of helps you to be able to frame how you can self-reflect and determine privilege within yourself as well. Now you may ask, why is this even important? So being able to acknowledge privilege in yourself and others will give you a better understanding of how each individual is affected by each situation differently. Since culture is an axis of privilege, and everyone differs in culture, having cultural competency is essential to be a good mental health advocate.
Absolutely.
So there's no one-size-fits-all aid for mental health, and having that cultural competency will make you able to give someone the proper help that is most beneficial to them.
Yeah. See, the fact that you're watching this means that you acknowledge mental health as an issue and are trying to find ways to remedy this problem. Firstly, we'd like to applaud you for taking that step. Yeah.
However, finding a balance between willingness to help and ability to help is crucial if you're going to be doing good work in the community as it pertains to mental health. So it's actually important that you're not giving advice on things that you don't quite understand. You want to make sure that you don't really go out of your scope of practice, of information, or of specialty. So when you find that balance between willingness to help and ability to help is shifting more towards the willing side and away from the ability side, in the sense that maybe you don't have the tools or the training to help in a specific situation, that is an excellent point at which you should begin considering referral. And so referral is basically just pointing somebody in the direction of resources or somebody else who can help, who's better equipped to help in a situation. And so this is important because although it can kind of feel like sometimes referring somebody is, the equivalent of you turning them away or you refusing to help them, you should actually keep in mind that maybe this resource is what they really need. You want to make sure that you are doing what's best for the person in the situation, not just what feels right for you to do. And so, it's important to realize as well that when you don't do that, you might end up doing more harm than good by sort of touching on things that you may not fully understand. So referral is a great way to make sure that you're helping the person and making sure that they get the help that they need.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So as we bring this webinar to a close, we just want you guys to get to be aware and be familiar with the services offered in your area, whether it be a counselor, psychiatrist, or if you're more comfortable with your family physician and primary healthcare provider. So if you're in a community where those services aren't offered, consider online resources and reach out to your social support system.
Now, unfortunately, we can't help you through the screen. So you're going to have to find these resources mostly on your own, using your own resources around you. You can definitely try to find, like Melanie just said, online resources to help you with that. I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for your time. We are the Fight Inside Society. My name is Lincoln.
My name is Josh.
My name is Melanie.
I'm Gary.
All right, have a good night, guys.
See you later.